Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Today is still Tuesday, March 28th. You should have in front of you voting list number 23. We have 6 bills in front of us and they're all Nathan's bills. So we're going to thank him in advance and allow him to walk us through the bills that we have before us. Good afternoon.
So the first bill on your list for today is House Bill 283, which as amended and reflected in the reprint is identical to Senate Bill 460, which passed the Senate earlier this session. So the bill requires Medicaid beginning on January 1, 2024 to provide coverage for gender affirming treatment. The amendment makes a very small technical change. On page 5 and line 12, the amendment is substituting the word that in place of the word who. And again, as amended, the bill is identical to Senate Bill 460.
Thank you, Senator Mounts.
Just a quick question. Since the constitutional amendments moving forward on reproductive freedom, we talked about an amendment that I offered on parental consent. It was mentioned that parental consent's already in the code, so parental consent isn't required. But if gender affirming procedures are interpreted to be within reproductive freedom and the definition of reproductive freedom, wouldn't it then be necessary to have parental consent actually in the act for there to be a required parental consent?
I follow the question, but because the reproductive freedom bills are outside of my area of expertise in the committee, I can't answer that question at this moment.
Okay. If there were a constitutional standard that said you had a right to unfettered or unabridged access to these procedures, would parental consent in the code still apply?
We could ask the analyst who handles that constitutional amendment.
Okay. I just wanted, I don't want to slow down this voting session. I just wanted to raise that point.
We'll get the answer.
Well, after we debated the Clean Air Act, remember yesterday, because it covered the bill, but we still wanted to put it in the bill. I thought I'd come back and do this one again. No.
Question related to.
So the scope of the constitutional amendment relating to reproductive freedom does not include gender affirming care within the scope of what those protections reach.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any additional questions on House Bill 283, which is the cross-file? Senator Lamb?
Yeah, to Patrick's point, I think I'm not going to amend this bill or, slow it down, but I think it does give me pause that gender affirming care is not included in the constitutional protections earlier, that if there are records that are traveling out of state that include gender affirming care and gender affirming care is banned in other states, that information is not prohibited from traveling out to other states. So, just a potentially a bill for next year or something to think about, but just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, are there any additional questions on House Bill 283? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So big.
Have a motion and a second for a favorable on House Bill 283. Any questions? Let's do a roll call.
House Bill 283. Vice Chair Klausmeier.
Yes.
Yes. Senator Reedy.
No.
No. Senator Ellis.
Yes.
Yes. Senator Mounts. No. Senator Guile.
Yes.
Yes. Senator Lamb. Yes. Senator Beidel.
Yes.
Yes. Senator Hershey.
No.
No. Madam Chair.
Aye.
Yes. 6-3, the bill passes.
Okay, that bill receives a favorable report. We'll go to the next bill.
Next bill on the list is House Bill 322, which as amended and reflected in the reprint is identical to Senate Bill 255, which passed the Senate unanimously earlier this session. The bill requires the Department of Health to expand access to and provide reimbursement for specified wraparound intensive in-home and case management services. There is an amendment, which is again technical on page 4 in line 21. The word steps replaces the word step.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for a favorable on House Bill 322. Are there any questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, that bill receives a unanimous favorable report. We'll move to the next bill.
So I think for purposes of explaining the effects of the bill, the next two related to the Board of Nursing should be switched. So I'm going to first explain Senate Bill 960 and then move on to House Bill 611. So Senate Bill 960, which was heard 2 weeks ago, as amended and shown in the reprint, will be identical to House Bill 611, pending one additional amendment that'll be offered on House Bill 611. So the bill is an emergency bill that extends the termination date of the State Board of Nursing by 2 years to July 1, 2025, and that's shown on pages 4 and 5 of the reprint. Through June 30th, 2025, the Secretary of Health has authority over the infrastructure operations of the board for which board special funds may not be used. And that provision is on pages 5 and 6. The bill terminates the terms of board members as specified on page 8 and requires the board to hire an external consultant to conduct an independent evaluation of the board and to develop an action plan as specified on page 7. And a report must be submitted by September 1st of this year. The bill also alters the exceptions to registered nurse and licensed practical nurse licensure requirements. It's found on pages 3 and 4 and expands the required contents of the board's annual report, and that's shown on page 3. So I'll walk through the amendments. First, clarifies that the exception to licensure applies to a person who has taken and failed an examination one time within the 120-day period immediately following rather than preceding submission of an application to the board, and specifies that infrastructure operations controlled by the Secretary of Health does not include policy or regulatory decisions. And that's on page 5 of the bill. On page 6, you can see that the amendments requires that the executive director designated by the Secretary of Health to be a registered nurse, removes language that would have repealed the requirement that the executive director be a registered nurse after authority over the board is returned to the board from the Secretary of Health. That provision is on pages 6 and 7, and instead requires the independent evaluation of the board to include an evaluation of executive director qualifications. The last two elements, the amendments require the external consultant hired by the board to be approved by the Secretary of Health, and alters the timing and termination of the terms of the board members. So these amendments would conform Senate Bill 960 to House Bill 611 with the one addition of the requirement that the executive director appointed by the secretary be a registered nurse. And for context, House Bill 611 passed the House unanimously.
Okay, so in this unusual sort of, maybe not unusual, because we'll have more of these probably as we move through session, we have basically the cross files in front of us, both versions of the Board of Nursing bills. Sponsored by the same person. I don't know.
Move favorable.
Okay. Have a motion and a second for a favorable on Senate Bill 960. And we'll take that up separately. So you have Senate Bill 960 as described in the amendments presented by council. Are there any questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. That bill receives a unanimous favorable report. We'll now turn to House Bill 611, which is the exact cross-file of the bill that we just passed unanimously. Are there any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Move favorable.
Have a motion and a second for a favorable on House Bill 611. All those in favor, raise your hand. That bill also receives a unanimous favorable report. We'll go to the next bill.
Next bill on the list is House Bill 1148, for which there are no amendments and therefore no reprint. Beyond that, I will say that House Bill 1148 incorporates 3 Senate bills, all 3 of which passed the Senate unanimously. And those 3 Senate bills that are included in House Bill 1148 are Senate Bill 362, which deals with certified community behavioral health clinics, Senate Bill 534, which preserves telehealth access, and Senate Bill 581, which establishes a value-based purchasing pilot program. And again, all 3 of those bills, which are components of House Bill 1148, passed the Senate unanimously. Beyond that, House Bill 1148 establishes a commission on behavioral health care, treatment, and access in the state.
Senator Klausmeyer, Vice Chair.
No, the Senate Bill 581, that was my bill that, so they wrapped it up and just put it in there.
It is included in this bill. The provisions are identical. And Senate Bill 581, which passed the Senate unanimously, is proceeding in the House as well.
Yeah, well, I just preceded it. I just went over, but so they'll most likely wrap that into the big one? No?
Both bills could pass. So House Bill 1148 containing these provisions could pass, and Senate Bill 581 could pass,
Okay.
and that would not create a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Have Senator Lamb, then Senator Ellis.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just, this is the first time I had a chance to actually look through the bill a little more clearly here. And I'm looking at the House bill and I'm just noticing as I'm scrolling through, there's a whole ton of members on this commission. Commission has, like, I think by my count, 38 members. So it gives me just a lot of hesitation because I've been, sitting on commissions and task force and work groups where there's a lot of members, and with 38 members on this commission, it just seems like I'm just not sure how much they can accomplish when there's that many cooks in the kitchen. I understand the need to have good representation, but it just gives me some pause that, can they be as effective as possible when you have 38 members? That's like a veto-proof majority of the Senate is sitting on this commission. Just seems like a lot of folks, and I wonder if there's some way to, maybe look at, since this is just the first time I'm looking at, to be able to consolidate this or bring this down to maybe a more manageable number that a commission could be worthwhile looking at some of these really important issues. I think these issues are really important, but I want them to be able to have the ability to have good discussion and discourse and kind of talk through some of these issues. And when you have that many folks on there, it calls into question how effective this might be with that many folks there. I think the other piece of this commission I'm just noticing now is that it's also being staffed by MDH. And I guess we don't have anyone from MDH here representing the department, but are they comfortable with staffing this commission, which with so many people will require some extra effort too, to kind of corral and coordinate all the efforts here? So I just, on the commission, I understand the need for the other pieces and value the policy input here, but when it comes to the commission, the fact that it has like that many members on it, makes me want to take a second look to see if there's some way that we can help make this a little bit more manageable for this commission, or even if the commission's needed. I think you could also move forward with the policy pieces without a commission. So.
Thank you, Senator. And I do want to say I've had several conversations with my counterpart on health and government operations, and I'll speak to a couple of the points that you've raised, which are points that I've raised. The first being the size of the number of people named to the commission. It's my understanding that they intend that some of the work would happen in subcommittees and work groups that spin off of the larger commission. As it pertains to the health department, my understanding is that the subcommittee on HGO and their work group convened with many of the stakeholders that are named in the bill, and that there was not any consternation with the bill as proposed or as amended. And looking at the committee testimony, at the bill testimony, the only unfavorable I see is by one named witness who did not provide any written testimony. But in terms of the stakeholder groups, whether it be MedChi, nurse practitioners, various other organizations that are named, the Maryland Department of Disabilities, the Mental Health Association, several the Public Defender's Office, NAMI, all of these groups actually supported this bill, the Behavioral Health System of Baltimore, Care First. And so my belief is that, and my understanding from our folks in the House is that they worked in great detail with most of the stakeholders who are named and those who are impacted by this group's work. So I don't know if those address your questions, but I at least wanted to share that the issues that you raised were discussed, and this was considered to be a consensus of those groups, so. Can I go to Senator? Senator Ellis?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So Nathan, listening to the bill numbers, the Senate bills that you mentioned that merges into House Bill 1148, the cross file here, 582, did I miss something? Did you mention, was that number?
So I didn't mention that one specifically. The cross file of House Bill 1148, Senate Bill 582 is up next on the voting list with amendments that would conform it to the House bill as it passed the House. That bill, Senate Bill 582, also contains all of those other provisions that I just described.
Okay, yeah, and I apologize. I didn't look down. I just focused on this line. So thanks.
Certainly.
Madam Vice Chair?
Yes, thank you. With 38, and the chair said they would be probably broken down into small groups, like we've been working. But my question is that in the bill, or is that just an assumption?
No, it was a conversation, but I don't know if it's in the bill.
Should maybe we do something like that, maybe to. But I don't want to tell somebody how to do their commission, but if where possible, maybe they should just, that might make you feel better, Senator.
Skimming through the bill now, I do not see a specific provision that would require the commission to meet. However, sorry, I'll finish that thought first. That would require them to meet in those specific work groups. There's a provision on page 6 that says the commission shall meet at least 3 times per year at the time and place designated by the commission. However, on the bottom of page 7, there's a provision that says the commission shall establish the following work groups: geriatric behavioral health, youth behavioral health, individuals with developmental disabilities, and individuals with complex behavioral needs, criminal justice involved behavioral health, and behavioral health workforce development, infrastructure coordinating, and financing. I apologize. In subsection B of that section, the work groups established under subsection A shall meet at least 2 times per year at the times and places determined by the work group.
And those provisions are also in Senator Augustine's bill, Senate Bill 582. So, which I would entertain a motion on the senator's bill first. Senator Reedy.
Can I ask a question? Maybe I'm not complete. What happens while this what is this commission meeting and then policy starts, or is policy getting started while the commission's meeting, or like, am I understanding how this is working right?
Are you referring to the other policies in the bill that are reflected in the 3 Senate bills that were listed?
Yes, so this is just like, is this commission being conducted and we get the results before we take a lot of action, or is the action happening and this informs it as we go, or?
I think that the chair described it as both, and I think that's accurate, that the separate components, meaning the application for planning funds for CCBHCs, the provisions related to preserving telehealth access, and the provisions related to the value-based purchasing pilot program all have their own effective dates.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I mean, we're not gonna hold the bill up, obviously. A little confused. Senator Lamb's gonna start regretting he said anything, because I agree, if we agree too much, it may be a problem for both of us, but no, I mean, I kind of, I know we're not gonna cut anybody out at this point, so I just don't understand. The 38 people, I mean, it's like the United Nations is gonna be meeting about, about healthcare, mental health policy. I mean, I see a reason why each one of these could be included, but I almost feel like there's some overlap, but we're not going to change that, I guess, in this voting session. It's just a little confusing to me. I hope we get some really good actionable stuff back.
No, I do hear you, and I'm not debating the bill. I'm really just responding because it's sort of similar to me to the conversation that we had on the ED wait times. There's the issues that they seek to address are very complex, and there are a lot of stakeholders. As council just shared, though, in putting this group together, they did consider work groups and subsets of people that should get together on specific behavioral health. So if you're dealing with geriatric behavioral health and youth behavioral health, maybe those people, the same people, don't need to be at every meeting, but they both need to be a part of the larger behavioral health conversation. So I think that's what the bill with this large compilation of behavioral health providers and service organizations considers. Senator Lamb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And having a few minutes gave me the opportunity to actually look at the department's testimony on this. And I think it's really instructive here. They essentially believe that this is the department, their letter of, I guess, support with amendments. They cited that at the time there were over 25 stakeholders as part of this commission. They also said that there is a Behavioral Health Advisory Council. The BHAC advises the Behavioral Health Administration, and they believe it's duplicative. Therefore, MDH recommends that BHAC be the forum for these tasks listed above for the commission. So I'm just not sure why we're creating a duplicative commission that's similar to the United Nations, to have so many members coming together in a way that I'm just not sure it can come to any meaningful conclusions or recommendations if there's so many cooks in the kitchen. And this obviously was loaded up by the House before it came over with even more members of the commission to be able to participate. And, I agree with Senator Reedy over there to not want to slow it down, but I also think that we have a responsibility to do some due diligence here. And if that means taking a close look at this commission, I don't have any problems with the policy pieces, and I think that's important. Those are necessary. But, is a commission really necessary as part of this bill, especially considering that the department considers this duplicative to the Behavioral Health Advisory Council? And then we also loaded more members onto it.
Thank you, Senator. I would just note, having read the department's testimony myself very quickly, that the amendments that the department offered did not speak to the membership. They more spoke to the opportunities for the group to look for grant funding. And so they did not recommend, even in their amendments or their letter, changes to the composition of the group.
Also read that in that they just think that the entire commission is duplicative, and therefore they didn't offer any changes to the membership because they said that the BHAC recommends that the BHAC is the forum for the tasks listed above for a commission.
Again, I don't want to interpret for the secretary beyond what I have in writing. I don't think that either of us is appropriately positioned to do that. I think they offered a letter of support for the bill, and they offered a couple of amendments, and that's all I'm saying. I don't want to get in the secretary's head.
Right, and
say
I don't
what
want
she
to
said.
either. Is it possible to check with the department or the secretary?
You mean to check to see if she meant what she wrote in the letter? I mean, you can
Right,
always hold the bill. I would just ask that you let me hear from Senator Reedy, and then if you would like to hold the bill and reach out to the secretary, I mean, you can certainly have a hold. All right, Senator Reedy.
So I was actually getting ready to just follow up on, so it says you have to meet at least 3 times per year. Is that the whole commission? I assume so. Because the subcommittee whole thing is not in the bill, even though I grant you, we definitely would want to get into that level of detail.
Yeah.
Is it?
So so starting with the work groups,
Oh, yeah,
um,
okay. No,
the
I
the
was
work
wrong.
groups are established at the bottom of page 7 and are required to meet at least 2 times per year.
Oh, gosh, I missed that. Okay.
And then
Great.
the
Okay.
the commission as a whole, as I recall, was required to meet 3 times per year.
Okay, no, that's actually, I missed that.
And
but
that's
That's
at the
great.
top
Thank
of
you.
page 6 in subsection F.
All right, that's good. So my apologies on that one. And then the only other question I had, just as a point of that is do we have a lot of bills where you have the 2 presiding officers and the governor agree on who's going to chair the commission?
I believe I've seen it before, but I don't have a running tally.
Okay. It's probably with so many different people involved, it probably would be good to have some consensus on who's going to chair it, but I just thought that was interesting. Okay, that's fine. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. So was there a request, Senator? I didn't want to proceed with the motion if there's a request for a hold. What's your pleasure?
Move favorable.
They have a motion? And a second for a favorable on. Let's take up, they're both in the same form. So we'll
Yes.
start with Senate Bill 582. Any questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay. Those opposed, raise your hand. Okay, that bill receives a unanimous favorable report. Now we'll take up House Bill 1148. Any questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. Got it, Tammy? Okay, any opposition, raise your hand. Seeing no opposition, that bill receives a unanimous favorable report with 1 abstention.
That's it.
All right, that is the last bill on our list, so that'll conclude our voting session for today. Tomorrow, guys, will probably be a little longer in that we have some bills that have come over from the House that will have full witness panels, proponents and opponents of the bill. And then we will have a voting session that includes some bills that are in the exact posture of our previous Senate bills. And we may have some that require some conforming. So a little bit longer day tomorrow. So enjoy the rest of your day today and prepare for the rest of the week. Meeting adjourned.